This is the Sony A74, and it's probably my favorite camera when it comes to the full-frame cameras from Sony, just because the image quality on both the A7IV and the A7C2, since they have the same sensor, is really fantastic, especially when you're shooting in 24 or 30 frames per second and using the full-frame video mode from this camera. In some ways, it even rivals the A7S III and the FX3 if you're just using this as like a YouTube camera or corporate work, documentaries where you're not kind of moving this camera around because it does have a lot of rolling shutter. The image quality on this camera is absolutely fantastic. But after using it for the past 7-8 months, there are two very minor things that for me, unfortunately, are deal breakers. And it's going to cause me to sell this A7 IV after a few months, just because cameras like the FX30, FX3, and now to some degree the A7S III after its firmware update now have fixed these issues, where for whatever reason they continue not to fix them on the A7 IV. So let's dive in. So I haven't been able to properly use the A7 IV as a studio camera because in my studio I actually use concert-based lighting. I don't use lighting that's actually meant for video, which is fine. However, in certain areas you end up getting flicker in your video. Now, cameras like the Sony A7 IV, pretty much all the modern Sony cameras have flicker-free modes. Even with those flicker-free modes, I'm actually not able to get 1/48 of a second as a shutter speed. And that's an issue because for my videos, I need the 1/48 of a second shutter speed in order not to get flicker from my studio lighting in my office. But I just can't get below even 1/50 in the flicker-free modes. And then in the normal modes, you can't go below 150 without hitting 140 instead of 148. So it's pretty much cameras that let you do true 24p that Sony will let you actually do 1/48 of a second shutter. If your camera doesn't do true 24p, it doesn't seem to let you do it, which is weird because even on the A6700, you can use the flicker-free mode of that camera and at least get to 1/48 of a second, which you can't do on the A7 IV. And you'd think they would do a firmware update to fix that, but they just haven't. In the A7 IV and other cameras I have that you just can't get 1/48 of a second shutter, I've gone down to 1/30 of a second, and sometimes that's a fix, but then the problem is if there's too much motion going on in frame, it just doesn't look right, and then sometimes it actually ends up not being a fix. You still see strobing, it's just not super apparent. The other thing that's been missing from this camera is the ability to use custom LUTs. Now, I don't need it all the time, but I specifically need it for live streaming, because when I'm actually recording video with the A7 IV, the Rec 709 LUT, it's fine, that's built into the camera, but when I'm actually live streaming, you can't use that Rec 709 LUT that's built into the camera, and at that point, you're either stuck filming in log for the actual live streams, or you're going to have to use some of the colored in profiles in the camera, and I just don't like using those. So that's why I've been using the FX30 for a lot of my live stream work. It just looks a lot better, at least better than using the A7 IV specifically for live streamings. But because I'm in the studio so much and I'm live streaming so much, it really has made me use the A7 IV a lot less than I had initially planned on. Now that I've moved back to using the Red Komodo for a lot of my gig work, I still have the FX30 and I'm pretty much using that as my YouTube / live stream camera, and I don't really need the A7 IV anymore. I wish it had these features. If it did, I'd actually keep it over the FX30 because I do like the image of the A7 IV. I think it's probably got the best image out of all of the full frame cameras, along with the A7C2 since it's the same sensor. But it's just missing some of those features, and of course it does overheat in long recording video times, so it's just gonna have to go by the wayside. But I really do love the A7 IV, and if they fix these things in a firmware update, or if they come out with an updated version of this camera that lets me do 1/48 of a second in the shutter, lets me do custom user-generated LUTs, maybe, this is a little bit of a wish, even lets me do external RAW out of the HDMI, then I will totally be coming back to this camera. I hope I was able to give you some knowledge and value out of today's video, and if so, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell to keep up to date with more videos like this. If you have any questions, make sure to ask in the comments below, and until next time, my name's Geoff Fagien. Thank you for joining me as always, and I will catch you in the next video.